Gratitude changes everything if you let it. Gratitude is a choice. It's a conscious decision that must be made every day. I've walked through many challenging seasons of life, and what I know to be true is this. In the face of adversity and hardship, gratitude closes the gap between suffering and joy. You may think, joy and suffering? That's an common connection, and let me explain. My story started at the age of 12 when I was diagnosed with a heart condition and an autoimmune disorder. After a year of sickness, of being on the homebound program, of being bedbound, only allowed to get up for the basic necessities of life, I realized that I had a choice. I had to choose to be grateful in those moments as I was waiting diagnosis. Following those years, there were relapses and recoveries and challenges, some of which are just too hard to speak about. And as I approached my early adult years as a college freshman, going into that experience, I started experiencing symptoms again. And by the age of 21, I had my first pregnancy and suffered from postpartum depression. By the age of 23, I was a mom to 3 young children, and I was feeling really overwhelmed with the responsibility and with managing my health. Later, by age 24, I was a mom to a child with special needs, with hearing loss that was profound. And later that year, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, which would start a decade-long journey of cancer and health crisis for him. By age 26, I was a mom to 5 children under the age of 5. We had 2 sets of twins. And I was overwhelmed and feeling like I was drowning in life and in managing my health and all of those everyday stressors that we all face. By age 30, I was in crisis. I didn't know who I was any longer. And feeling gratitude for my situation, for my life circumstances, felt impossible. And so I went on this journey of self-exploration and of really developing a sense of gratitude when I didn't always feel so inspired to be grateful. One evening, I was parked on campus ready to teach my night class after having worked a full day as a nurse, a stressful day as a nurse. I had driven straight from the hospital to campus, and I was parked in the parking lot outside the building of my very first college class, Psychology 101. And the irony was not lost on me. I was really faced with the stark contrast of the freshman college Abby, that version of me with those hopes and dreams. And compared to my current reality, there was a world of difference. And when I put the car in park, I turned the radio off and I just sat in silence, something I rarely let myself do. I had really been in that glorification of busy and hustle culture that we all sometimes take a part in. And so silence was hard for me. And I sat there and I really thought about all of the challenges that I had been facing for the last 10 years or so. And I cried. I let myself cry for the very first time in a really long time. And as I sobbed and thought about how difficult life felt in that moment, I realized that I had to make a choice. I realized that I had to choose to be grateful, that I had to choose to be in the moment and be present. And I decided that I needed to be able to offer my class and my students something of value that night, even though I didn't feel like I was able to do it. So I did a quick Google search and I looked for a TED Talk to show my class. And I don't quite remember the search terms that I used, but one of the very first talks listed was Brené Brown's The Power of Vulnerability. And I watched the first few minutes knowing that her message was so important. I had to share it with my class. And so that night I did, and my students really enjoyed the content, and they were really receptive to it. And I knew at that point that Dr. Brown's call for vulnerability was something that I needed to answer. And so for the first time in my life, I shared a part of my story that I had never really been open with anyone about. And that was the beginning of my healing journey. And I later learned the power of gratitude and how important it is to be grateful when we're trying to accept life circumstances. And so as I moved through this experience and this journey, I knew that gratitude had to be a part of it. So when you think about gratitude, it's important to understand what gratitude is. It's that feeling or quality of being thankful or grateful for someone or for something. And for me, I knew that I had so much to be grateful for, even though I had some really challenging circumstances. And so as I moved through, I realized that gratitude's importance cannot be understated. Gratitude has the power to make our connections and our relationships stronger. It has the power to strengthen our confidence. It has the power to heal us. It has the power to highlight our strengths. And it has the power to foster resilience. And so gratitude's impact then is that we have this skill of gratitude that we can choose to develop. And according to Dr. Robert A. Emmons, the world's leading scientific expert on gratitude, he states that gratitude is really the character of giving us the ability to change our life and make it better for ourselves, but also for others. And so I want to encourage you to think about the ways that you can make your life better and that of others through practicing gratitude. There are some gratitude myths, though. We often think that gratitude is just a naive form of positive thinking. We think also that gratitude is not possible or even appropriate in the midst of suffering or challenges. And I'd like to invite you to think about gratitude differently. I think gratitude really is intentional and informed positive thinking. It's actually making the choice to be grateful even though you know life is hard. And what I have found to be true in my life is that during the most difficult of circumstances, I needed to feel grateful and I needed others to feel grateful for the good things in their lives. And so I want you to think about gratitude as a process. You must feel grateful, that's step one, but step two is that you must actually express that gratitude. In a 2012 study that was done at UC Berkeley on the power of gratitude, 2,000 participants were surveyed, and of those 2,000 participants, 90% reported feeling gratitude on a regular basis. But of that 90%, only 52% of women and 44% of men actually expressed that gratitude on a regular basis. And so it isn't enough to just feel the emotion of gratitude. It's impactful, most impactful, when you actually express that gratitude and share it with others. So gratitude is a practice, and gratitude takes practice. So I want you to think about ways that you can express your gratitude. Maybe it's writing a thank you note or sending an email or a text message. It's showing appreciation. Maybe it's writing down in a journal 3 things you're grateful for today. Maybe it's starting a gratitude jar or doing random acts of kindness. In whatever way that looks for you, I want to encourage you today to go out and show your gratitude, not just feel that emotion. And if we think about gratitude as a garden, and that garden as a metaphor for life, we must really think about the vision that we want to have for our life. How do we want to include and incorporate gratitude every day? We need to have that vision, and then we need to plan and prepare and prioritize gratitude. We need to plant good things and gratitude because you reap what you sow. And you really need to think about protecting and pruning and doing all of that work to protect your garden of gratitude. You need to build a fence for protection, keeping those things out that are going to consume you or that are going to make you feel a little less positive about your life. You also want to trust the process. This really is a process of developing the skill of gratitude, and I always like to remind myself that perseverance wins out. So trust the process, have patience. Remember to control what you can control, which a lot of times is just our attitude and our effort. Not much else sometimes falls within our control, but it's so important that we focus on what matters. And so when we focus our time and attention on the things that matter and the things that we can control, there's a synergy there that you just can't replicate. It's so important to think about that. We're all just watering seeds, and we want to think about the seeds that we're watering. What is it that we're planting? What is it that we're growing? Is it gratitude? If not, I would encourage you to think about making a change. And it all starts with mindset. And I want you to really understand with gratitude that you don't want to make it a chore. Gratitude doesn't need to be an item on your ever-growing to-do list. Gratitude doesn't need to be fancy or expensive or elaborate. It just needs to be simple, mostly spontaneous, because sometimes you do need to plan for it. And it needs to be fun and free. And when you think about gratitude, remember how important it is. Remember that gratitude matters. In life circumstances, I always think that it's important to get back to the basics and get back to what's important to you. And that's going to look different for everyone in this room. But when you think about gratitude, how do you want it to show up in your life? Despite the challenges of life, I still believe in happy endings. To be human is great. We have so much meaning in our lives. Our lives and our work are deeply meaningful, but it's rarely easy. And Brené Brown tells us that there is no joy without gratitude. So I want to encourage you to have courage, to be kind to yourselves and to others, to stay curious, to be grateful, to express your gratitude, and to always remember that the world needs your gifts. Together, let's be ambassadors of gratitude. Thank you.